Phil Sheridan covers the Eagles, ESPN.com's NFL Nation. And as we are getting close to the NFL draft, Phil, there's a lot of obviously smokescreen stuff out there, but one comes close to home, and that's Fletcher Cox. And a lot of people talking about, did he turn down a deal? Did they offer him a deal? Did he? Didn't he? What should we believe when the smoke clears on Fletcher Cox?
That's a good question. I think it's a little hazy right now. I'm not quite sure I've got the full picture yet myself, but it started with this Howard Eskin report the other night that saying that Cox had turned down a deal with $60 million in guaranteed money, and then his agent went on another radio station the other day, maybe yesterday, and said that he never talked to Howard. There's no truth to that. But then he also kind of said something like, when they talk about guaranteed money, that that doesn't mean $60 million all at once or all up front. It could be bonuses like paid out as roster bonuses after the year ends. In which case, by that definition, it's not really guaranteed money. So, in a sense, the agent, by kind of going on the air to deny Howard's report, he kind of confirmed that there was at least some substance to it. He was explaining the difference between guaranteed money and money that's categorized as a bonus. So my expectation is that is still the deal that the Eagles want to do, and they will get it done. I don't think it's as this may actually help it along because if somebody from the Eagles side leaked this out to Howard Eskin, for example, which it seems like what the tone of it would seem like something the team would do to try to get the public pressure on Fletcher Cox and off of the team. It seems like previous things that have happened along those lines. So my guess is, they're a little frustrated by the negotiation, but he's a priority for them. And, letting him get to the point where they're dealing with, like, the franchise tag or something like that would be such a big mistake.
Right.
They have a bad history with that. They lost Jeremiah Trotter after tagging him and then removing the tag. Corey Simon, same thing. So they had, bad experiences with defensive players, who were due for new contracts in the past. They let it get to that point. I believe it'll get done. Probably more like this year than going into the season, just because, Howard Rosen has made no secret that's a major priority for him.
Phil, does a trade of Fletcher Cox, if it's for real that he said, you know what, nope, I don't want your fully guaranteed money, which I think is the conversation. Was it fully guaranteed? Was it not guaranteed? Was it even there? If they offered him $60 million fully guaranteed and he turns that down, does a trade make sense?
Yeah, I think it starts to at that point. I mean, if the details are, that Howard reported are accurate, then yeah, you reach a point, where, like I said, with the Eagles in the past, they got to that point with Trotter and with Corey Simon, but to get to that point, they had to go through all this stuff. I mean, the best way to head that off would be either to get a deal done, soon, or go ahead and move on. If you're going to lose them anyway in a year or two, or it's going to get so contentious that you end up, taking the franchise tag off them or something like that, or not wanting to use it because of the fallout from that. Now you're talking about letting them walk away and getting nothing in return, or maybe a compensatory draft pick in 2 years, which that's not a whole lot to settle for to give up a guy like Fletcher Cox. So if it's not going well and they don't think they can get it done at a reasonable price, by their estimation, yeah, I think that at that point you would start to say, all right, well, if we're going to lose them anyway, what would it take, to get value for him now? And Mike Sando of ESPN wrote a column suggesting some possible draft day trades that could happen, or he believes should happen. One of them was the Eagles trading Fletcher Cox and the number 8 pick to Tennessee to get the number 1 pick. Now, if they could get 7 spots up and get the quarterback of their choice and basically give up their number 8 pick and Fletcher Cox and nothing else, yeah, if somebody offered them that deal, they would probably take it because Fletcher Cox has been here for 4 years. They haven't won a playoff game. That's not his fault, but it's just a statement about the value of different positions. You need a quarterback if you're going to be a legitimate contender in this league, and you can be, really good on the defensive line. You can have a really great player like Fletcher Cox, but you're not going anywhere unless you have a quarterback. So if it took Cox to get up to number 1,
sure,
I could see them doing something like that. I mean, I don't think that particular trade seems very likely to me, but it was an interesting idea. And if they're at the point where they think they're going to end up losing him, either whether the negotiations are going bad or it's getting contentious, if they reach that point, then I could see them trying to figure out a way to execute a trade that lets them get some value for him in return.
Well, it's interesting because you look at just go to a guy like J.J. Watt. I think he's probably held in higher regard than Fletcher Cox is around the league, and they're a team that hasn't won a playoff game with him either. So very comparable. If you don't have that quarterback, you can have the best defensive player. Sometimes it doesn't work out. I guess the question would be is, do you think any of these quarterbacks are worth moving up for with a Fletcher Cox? I mean, if you're going to tell me I'm going to move up to get a guy and Fletcher Cox is the guy, fine. But are these three guys that are being mentioned worth it?
Yeah, I have real questions about that myself. And my basic feeling about it right now is that they're all projections. I mean, they're all guys you have to look at and say, well, based on his skill set, his size, his arm strength, the things that he can do physically, that he's got what it takes to be a good quarterback. But none of them, Carson Wentz played basically a year and a half, less than 2 years at North Dakota State. Now, they won national championships, but they won national championships at North Dakota State the 4 previous seasons with a different quarterback. And that quarterback was undrafted the year he came out. And he won 4 straight national titles at North Dakota State at that level of football. Now, that Carson Wentz is bigger. He's got a great arm and all that stuff. But I don't know. Jared Goff's team has a losing record while he's been there at Cal. Not really, an impressive amount of success on the field. Now, there's a team around him that's got something to do with that. It's not all Jared Goff's fault. But, the quarterback does have something to say about that. And Paxton Lynch is the other guy that everybody talks about. Temple beat Memphis this year. Now, Temple had a really good program this year and had a really good year. But, if you're an elite NFL franchise-level quarterback, I got to think you have a little more success in terms of wins and losses than these guys all had in college. None of them had. Again, Wentz had a great record in college, but the program he was in had a great record every year before he was the quarterback, and they'll probably have one again next year. It's just a great program at that level. So
that's a real interesting point you make there, Phil, by the way.
Yeah, I'm just not that convinced that any of these guys have done anything on the field to make you say, well, they're absolutely a lock. It's not like Andrew Luck coming out in that sense. None of these guys have the resume that Andrew Luck had. Now, they could end up being as good or better, down the line with the right coaching and the right situation. That goes into a lot of this as well. But none of these guys, to me, is a surefire can't-miss prospect. Now, what matters isn't what I think, obviously. It's what Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie have decided after spending a lot of time with all these guys. I mean, they went and visited, each of these guys at their school. They brought them all in to the NovaCare complex and spent time with them here in Philadelphia. They've done everything they can do to kind of get a handle on these quarterback prospects. If they're convinced one of those guys can be that guy, that's what we're talking about. It's not whether they're definitely going to be that guy or not. You don't know until it happens. But if they believe it and they're really, committed to it, then it's something that they'd have to be willing to do, I would think. Because anything you can do to get that quarterback is going to be worth it in the long run.
Phil Sheridan's with us. About a week ago, Phil, you wrote a piece about, they're not desperate for a quarterback, but should try to move up for the draft. I was going to ask you, if they were to move up and not draft a quarterback, is there a guy that you think would be a target?
Well, there are a few guys up there, and, this again comes down to evaluations, and we don't know what their draft board looks like. I mean, Howie Roseman said there are 10 players that they consider like a cut above in this draft. So they moved up into number 8 with that trade of Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso to Miami in order to get into that top 10. Now, if there's, among that top 10, if there's 2 or 3 guys that they think are even a cut above that are the cream of the crop, for example, then yeah, I could see them doing it. Now, who that would be exactly, I mean, then it gets interesting. There's like Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback, who's in some mock drafts have him going number 1 overall. Laramie Tunsil, the offensive tackle, is another guy that is a number 1 overall pick in a lot of people's mock drafts. Or Joey Bosa, the defensive end from Ohio State. Those are guys that if they have booked that guy and they said, no, this guy is the one guy that could really make a difference with this team. Either a bookend tackle with Lane Johnson, who can play on the offensive line together, for the next decade. That would be attractive. A guy like Bosa who can really make Jim Schwartz's defense go, that could also be attractive. But to me, the way their mindset is and everything that they've done as an organization, I mean, it's all about quarterbacks. It's everything Lurie's been preaching for the last few years. We've got to get that quarterback again. They drafted Donovan McNabb 2nd overall in 1999, and after a couple of years of kind of getting him acclimated and getting the team together. In the span of 8 years, they went to 5 NFC Championship games and a Super Bowl. I mean, that is exactly what Jeff Lurie is trying to figure out how to do again. And it all started with McNabb then, and it's all going to start with a quarterback now.
Phil Sheridan at Sheridan Scribe over at ESPN.com. NFL Nation covering the Eagles 15 days away from the NFL draft. I'm sure plenty of draft rumors will get filtered out there between now and then. The Eagles sitting tight at number 8 in the current draft positioning. Phil, always a pleasure, pal. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Mike. Thank you.